Have you ever stopped to think about who the men were that chose to follow Jesus? They weren't kings or powerful leaders. They were ordinary people with simple lives, dreams, and even doubts. Men who suddenly received a calling that would change everything and would transform the history of humanity forever. Imagine being in their place. Fishermen, tax collectors, men known for their impulsiveness or even for their skepticism. What was it like when they heard the voice of Jesus saying, "Come, follow me"? What did they feel as they left behind their nets, their tables, their entire lives? And why did Jesus choose exactly those 12 men? In this video, we're going to dive into the life and journey of the apostles, the first disciples who not only witnessed the miracles and teachings of Jesus, but also received the mission to spread his message to the world. We'll learn who they were, where they came from, what they did before being called, and most importantly, understand why they were chosen to walk alongside the greatest leader who ever lived. Was there a pattern? Some special trait? Or did Jesus simply see something beyond what others could see? Get ready to discover the real stories behind the names, the challenges they faced, and the transformation they experienced. This is the story of the journey of ordinary men who accepted an extraordinary calling, a journey that still inspires us today. The first apostle to be chosen was Simon Peter. Peter was a fisherman who worked on the Sea of Galilee alongside his brother and close friends. After an entire night without catching a single fish, he was cleaning his nets when Jesus approached and asked to use his boat to teach the crowd gathered on the shore. After the preaching, Jesus instructed Simon to cast the nets once again. Though tired and not fully convinced, Peter obeyed. The result was an astonishing catch so large that he needed help to pull the fish out of the water. Faced with what he had just witnessed, Simon was overcome with fear and felt unworthy. That's when Jesus invited him to follow, saying that from that moment on, he would fish for people instead of fish. Simon accepted the call and left everything behind to follow Jesus. Peter was known for being impulsive, outspoken, and often acted before thinking things through. On several occasions, he showed great courage, but also fear and moments of weakness. Still, he always returned with sincerity in his heart. Among the disciples, he was respected and naturally stepped into a position of leadership. Jesus likely chose Simon Peter because he saw in him strong leadership potential and a willingness to be transformed. Even though Peter made mistakes, he had the courage to act, and that made him a key figure in the mission. His intense personality would be shaped over time, and he would become one of the central pillars in spreading the message of Jesus, even when facing opposition and persecution. The second apostle was Andrew. Andrew was the brother of Simon Peter and, like him, a fisherman by trade. He was originally a disciple of John the Baptist. When John pointed to Jesus and declared him the Lamb of God, Andrew decided to follow Jesus. He spent that very day with him, listening and learning. Afterwards, he went to tell his brother Peter that he had found the Messiah. It was Andrew who brought Peter to meet Jesus for the first time. Unlike his brother, Andrew was more reserved and discreet. In the biblical accounts, he appears less frequently, but always during significant moments. He was the one who pointed out the boy with the loaves and fishes before the miracle of the multiplication. Andrew consistently showed awareness, initiative, and spiritual sensitivity. When Jesus began forming his closest group of disciples, Andrew was already there. He had heard, seen, and believed. He did not hesitate to follow the new teacher. He was among the first to recognize who Jesus truly was and displayed a simple yet unwavering faith. Jesus likely chose Andrew because of his sincere desire to seek the truth and his courage to change direction when he recognized something greater. He wasn't concerned with attention or recognition, but always acted with purpose and conviction, His calm and observant nature would serve as a balancing force among the disciples, and his initiative in bringing others to Jesus showed that, from the very beginning, he understood the true importance and value of the mission. The third apostle was James, son of Zebedee. James was the son of Zebedee and the brother of John. He worked as a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee, in a family business that even had hired workers, which indicates that his family had a certain level of financial stability. He was with his brother and with Peter when Jesus called them. At the moment of the calling, James immediately left the boat and his father to follow Jesus. James had a strong personality. He and his brother John were nicknamed by Jesus Sons of Thunder, likely because they were temperamental or explosive. There are accounts of them asking Jesus to call down fire from heaven on a Samaritan village that did not receive them well. They were also the two who asked to sit at Jesus' right and left in his kingdom, showing ambition and a desire for position. Despite this temperament, James was faithful to Jesus. He was one of the three closest disciples, along with Peter and John. He was present at key moments, such as the resurrection of Jairus' daughter, the transfiguration, and the moment of anguish in Gethsemane. Jesus probably chose James for his willingness to act, his courage, and his commitment. He was not passive. He had energy and strength traits that, although needing to be controlled, could be used for the advancement of the kingdom. James was also the first apostle to be martyred, showing that his faithfulness was genuine, even in the face of death. The fourth apostle was John, the brother of James. John was the son of Zebedee and worked alongside his brother as a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. They fished in the same boat with their father, suggesting a close family business. When Jesus walked by and called them, John didn't hesitate. He immediately left everything behind, his boat, his nets, and even his family, to follow Jesus. He was young at the time, possibly the youngest among the 12 apostles. John had a strong and intense personality. Like his brother James, Jesus gave him the nickname Son of Thunder, likely because of his passionate character. However, as time passed, John underwent a deep transformation. From being an impulsive and fiery disciple, he became known as the Apostle of Love. In the Gospels and his letters, John speaks more than anyone else about the love of Christ and its importance in a believer's life. He was one of Jesus' three closest disciples, together with Peter and James. John was present at key moments in Jesus' ministry, such as the Transfiguration, the resurrection of Jairus' daughter, and the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Remarkably, John was the only one of the 12 apostles who stood by the cross during Jesus' crucifixion. Before Jesus died, he entrusted John with the care of his mother Mary, showing the deep trust Jesus had in him. Jesus likely chose John not only for his strong personality, but because beneath it, John had a sensitive heart and profound spiritual insight. He was faithful, devoted, and shared a unique bond with Jesus. Later, John authored one of the 4 Gospels, several important letters, and the book of Revelation. The same town as Peter and Andrew. When Jesus found Philip, he simply said, "Follow me." There were no miracles or long explanations, just a direct call. Philip immediately responded and soon after went to find Nathanael to tell him that he had found the one Moses and the prophets had written about. Philip was practical, straightforward, and someone who valued knowledge of the scriptures. His reaction upon recognizing Jesus indicates that he was already expecting the Messiah. However, he also showed limitations in faith. In one episode, when Jesus asked where they could buy bread to feed a crowd, Philip responded rationally, saying that even 200 denarii would not be enough. This showed his tendency to think logically and humanly in difficult situations. On another occasion, he was the one who asked Jesus, "Show us the Father, and that will be enough for us," revealing some difficulty in understanding Jesus' divinity, even after spending much time with him. Jesus probably chose Philip because he represented the ordinary disciple, someone who believes, but needs to grow in understanding and faith. He was approachable, simple, and eager to learn. His initiative to call Nathanael also shows that from early on, He understood that following Jesus was not something to keep to oneself. The sixth apostle was Nathanael, also called Bartholomew. Nathanael was introduced to Jesus by Philip. When he heard that the Messiah was Jesus of Nazareth, his response was direct. "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" This comment shows that Nathanael was sincere, critical, and spoke his mind. Even so, he accepted Philip's invitation to see for himself. As he approached, Jesus surprised him by saying, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael was astonished and asked how Jesus knew him. Jesus replied that he had seen him under the fig tree before Philip called him. That was enough for Nathanael to declare that Jesus was the Son of God and the King of Israel. Nathanael was honest, upright, and a seeker of truth. He didn't seem to be someone easily influenced, but when he had a direct experience with Jesus, he immediately recognized his authority and identity. This shows that he was sensitive to the truth, even if skeptical at first. Jesus likely chose Nathanael because he represented those with a pure heart and a sincere search for God. Though he questioned things, Nathanael was open to revelation. His honesty and discernment would be valuable in the mission, especially among those who, like him, needed to see in order to believe. The seventh apostle was Matthew, also known as Levi. Matthew was a tax collector. He worked seated at a tax booth in Capernaum, collecting fees on behalf of the Roman government. This role made him a despised figure among the Jewish people, seen as a traitor and someone associated with greed and corruption. Because of his profession, he was rejected by society and likely lived a life of isolation, despite enjoying financial stability and a comfortable lifestyle. One day, Jesus passed by the place where Matthew was working and simply said, "Follow me." Without hesitation, Matthew stood up, left everything behind, and began following Jesus. Not long after, he hosted a large banquet at his home and invited other tax collectors and socially outcast individuals to come and meet Jesus. This gathering scandalized the Pharisees, but Jesus responded with clarity and compassion. "I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Matthew likely had an organized mind, trained in accounting, record-keeping, and attention to detail. These skills may have contributed to his role as the author of the gospel that bears his name. In his account, he carefully documents the genealogy of Jesus, along with key teachings and events throughout Jesus' ministry. Jesus probably chose Matthew to demonstrate that no one is beyond the reach of grace. He wasn't concerned with Matthew's past reputation or how society viewed him. Instead, Jesus saw a heart ready for transformation. Matthew's quick decision to follow and his eagerness to bring others, especially those rejected like himself, reveal that he truly understood the call and wanted to share it with others who needed hope. The eighth apostle was Thomas. Thomas was known for his cautious nature and for wanting to verify things before believing. He appears only a few times in the biblical records, but when he does, his words leave a lasting impression. When Jesus decided to return to Judea, a region where his life was in danger, it was Thomas who said to the other disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." This shows that although he is often remembered for his doubts, Thomas was also brave and deeply loyal. The most well-known aspect of Thomas's character emerged after Jesus' resurrection. When the other disciples told him they had seen the risen Lord, Thomas responded that he would only believe if he could place his fingers in the nail marks and touch the wound in Jesus' side. 8 days later, Jesus appeared again and invited Thomas to do exactly that. Moved by the encounter, Thomas declared, "My Lord and my God," making one of the most powerful and direct statements about Jesus' divinity found in the Gospels. Thomas was rational, thoughtful, and wanted to be certain before fully giving himself over to any truth. His faith required a solid foundation. He wasn't willing to follow based on excitement or the influence of others. He sought genuine conviction. Jesus likely chose Thomas because he knew that Thomas's personality would be valuable in reaching those who struggle with doubt. Thomas represented the kind of person who seeks evidence, but who, once convinced, commits wholeheartedly. His story shows us that sincere doubt is not condemned by God. It can be the very path to a deep, unshakable faith. The ninth apostle was James, son of Alphaeus. James, son of Alphaeus, is one of the apostles about whom the least is known. Despite the lack of details, his name consistently appears in the lists of the 12 chosen by Jesus. Little is recorded about his background before becoming a disciple, and his personality is not highlighted like some of the others. He likely worked in a common trade of the time, such as fishing or farming, and was directly called by Jesus to leave his routine and follow him. The Bible does not describe any specific miracles or notable actions performed by James, but that does not reduce his importance among the apostles. Some identify him as James the Less to distinguish him from James, son of Zebedee. This could refer to age, physical stature, or social standing. Jesus may have chosen James to show that the mission also included ordinary men, those not seeking recognition, but willing to serve quietly and faithfully. James represents the kind of person who supports the foundation of a community, even without public attention. His presence among the 12 reminds us that every follower has value, and that serving the kingdom of God often happens in small, unseen acts of faithfulness. The 10th apostle was Judas Thaddeus. Judas Thaddeus, also simply called Thaddeus or Lebbaeus, is another apostle about whom little detailed information is known regarding his life before following Jesus. He is often identified as Judas, son of James, to distinguish him from Judas Iscariot, the apostle who betrayed Jesus. Very little is known about his profession or personality before the calling, but in the Gospels, he appears as one of those who were with Jesus and actively participated in his teachings and miracles. On one significant occasion, he was the one who asked Jesus during the Last Supper why he would reveal himself only to the disciples and not to the whole world, showing his genuine concern and curiosity about the mission. Judas Thaddeus is traditionally associated with being a dedicated, faithful, and persevering apostle. In many Christian traditions, he is also regarded as the patron saint of difficult and desperate causes, largely because of his unwavering faithfulness despite many hardships. Jesus probably chose Judas Thaddeus because he represented those followers who, even without standing out publicly, were essential in supporting and strengthening the group. His discreet and constant presence demonstrates that Jesus valued not only charismatic leaders, but also loyal servants who helped the mission advance quietly without seeking recognition or fame. The 11th apostle was Simon the Zealot. Simon, called the Zealot, is identified this way to distinguish him from Simon Peter. The nickname Zealot indicates that he probably belonged to a radical political religious group that advocated the use of force against Roman rule. Before following Jesus, Simon likely had a strong sense of justice and nationalist fervor, seeking to free Israel from oppression. This profile may have caused conflicts and an intense attitude when facing challenges. When Jesus called him, Simon left behind his ideas and actions connected to zealotry to follow a different path, the path of peace, love, and spiritual transformation. This shows that Jesus wanted a diverse group, capable of representing different realities and perspectives, and also willing to change deeply. Simon does not appear much in the accounts, but his presence among the 12 shows the importance of unity among people of different backgrounds and temperaments in Jesus' ministry. Jesus probably chose Simon the Zealot to show that the mission of the kingdom was not based on violence or political power, but on faith and inner change. Simon would be an example of transformation, leaving political struggle for a greater spiritual fight. The 12th apostle was Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is most famously known for betraying Jesus. He served as the treasurer of the group, responsible for managing the money belonging to the disciples. Very little is recorded about his life before joining Jesus, but his surname Iscariot suggests that he was from the region of Kerioth, making him possibly a foreigner or outsider among the other apostles. Throughout his time with Jesus, Judas was present during many important moments and witnessed firsthand the teachings and miracles of the Messiah. However, his ambition and greed eventually led him down a dark path. Motivated by desire for money, he agreed to betray Jesus in exchange for 30 pieces of silver. Some scholars believe that Judas became disillusioned because he expected Jesus to establish a political kingdom and was disappointed by the spiritual nature of his mission. Despite his eventual betrayal, Judas was still chosen by Jesus to be part of the inner circle of 12. This reveals that Jesus selected real people, complete with their flaws, weaknesses, and struggles. Judas's presence among the 12 highlights the reality that even those with conflicted hearts and misguided intentions were given both opportunity and responsibility in the ministry. Judas Iscariot serves as a solemn warning about the dangers of greed, lack of faith, and hypocrisy. Though his actions were negative, his role was necessary for the fulfillment of God's plan of salvation, showing how God can work through human weakness to accomplish divine purposes. After calling 12 ordinary men to follow him, Jesus began a mission that would change the world forever. Each apostle had his own story, qualities, and limitations, but all accepted the call to leave their previous lives behind and commit to a greater purpose. Simon Peter, the impulsive fisherman, became the rock on which the church was built. Andrew, discreet and faithful, showed that the mission is for everyone, even those who prefer to stay behind the scenes. James and John, the sons of thunder, learned to transform their strength and ambition into service and love. Matthew, the tax collector, was living proof that no one is beyond the reach of grace. Thomas, who needed to see to believe, reminds us that doubts are part of faith when we seek sincere answers. Others, like Philip and Nathanael, show us that Jesus' invitation is for those who honestly seek the truth, while James, son of Alphaeus, and Judas Thaddeus, though less visible, are examples of faithfulness and perseverance. Simon the Zealot demonstrates the transformation possible when the heart opens to a greater purpose. And Judas Iscariot, despite his betrayal, teaches us about the consequences of wrong choices and God's power to fulfill his plans even amid human failures. The journey of the apostles was not easy, but it was marked by growth, transformation, and surrender. They were real men with doubts, mistakes, and virtues. Jesus did not choose perfection. He chose hearts willing to learn, follow, and serve. Today, their stories continue to inspire people to respond to the call to live with purpose, faith, and courage. The mission that began with those 12 men remains alive, and each of us can be part of it.